I don't always need to think things that have been hard in the past need to be hard in the future. Like if it's super hard, maybe it's not the right thing at the right time.
Welcome to Journeys Through Change, a podcast that inspires women to let go of the fear and say yes to possibility. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, creator, and empowerment coach who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders ride the waves of change with ease and grace. I now work with women to step into change and unleash the power they have to create a life they love. Whether you're contemplating a change in your career, relationship, health, lifestyle, or anything in between, nothing's off the table. I'll be offering up simple insights to help you manage the ups and downs of change and sharing interviews with successful women who took a leap of faith to create the life they knew they were meant to live, sharing their wisdom, advice, and all the juicy lessons they learned along the way. So get cozy in your favorite comfy chair and let's get started. I always say the power of this podcast has been the remarkable women behind the remarkable stories. These are women who have not only experienced change in their lives, but have ultimately transformed how they view themselves, their inner gifts, and the power they have to create their own path. Having lost her father at age 18, Kristen Swinehart began to question and dig deeper into life after death and soon realized she could communicate with spirits on the other side. However, it would take her time to overcome the resistance to pursue her true calling into the spiritual realm. Kristen started out as an attorney, navigating the legal system. But as she puts it, after countless objections and cross-examinations, she finally realized it wasn't what she was meant to do. Making the decision to follow her heart, she began her psychic mediumship journey and has never looked back. She started holding individual, group, and family readings, and after becoming a flight attendant post-pandemic, expanded her offerings even more. Known as the Flying Medium, Kristen also offers spiritual destination channeling and travel planning, providing travelers with divine guidance and the opportunity to embark on a journey that truly speaks to their soul. Kristen brings a refreshing perspective on the importance of questioning personal norms, trusting your intuition, and paying close attention to the signs offered by the universe. Kristen, I am so excited to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, Kristen, I want to go back a little bit so that we can get to the different twists and turns, but maybe you could start up by telling us where you grew up, just a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I grew up in a very small town in Ohio. It's very rare that somebody would end up on the path that I ended up from my town. But that's another story for a different day. I went off to college in Oklahoma. I ended up in law school in Florida. And then I passed the Florida bar and started practicing law in Florida.
This is obviously after college, you go to law school, you pass the bar, you start on this journey to become a lawyer. Were you a litigator? What did you?
No, not that exciting. Not totally. So I actually went to law school because I wanted to work in sports and entertainment. And quite frankly, I really wanted to be a band tour manager. I had no intention of really wanting to be behind a desk and law books and doing, the regular lawyer thing when I went to law school. So I started working with an NFL agent right out of school. However, he also had a wills and probate practice. And so as you can imagine, I didn't get to do the fun NFL stuff. I got to do the wills and probate. And then we'll just see the irony of that, how that unfolds later, because, obviously wills and probate is helping people figure out what to do when they pass and helping the family once somebody passes on how to handle their assets and their estate matters. So I actually have chills talking about it because as I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, the universe was so clever.
Oh my God. I just made that connection as you were saying it too. That is wild. Okay. So you start doing this work. How long were you in it for?
I mean, it didn't take me too terribly long. It was probably really only between 8 months to a year after I got in there, because as I would later find out, being behind a desk is not my, not my forte. And also what I realized too, and I didn't know this at the time. Now, when I look back, I'm an empath, which means I can feel other people's feelings very strongly. So as you can imagine, practicing law, when somebody loses somebody and they're dealing with grief or all of the tension that comes with those matters, I was picking up on all that energy. I was exhausted. I was 25, 26 years old, and it just made no sense to me on why, this, I was like, gosh, I'm wiped out. Am I going to do this for another 40 years? I don't think so. But the bigger picture, and as you touched upon in the intro, I lost my father at 18. And so even at 18, I started to question, so we just live and then we die? That's it? I don't really understand that. And then when I started practicing law, I was like, oh, we live, then we do a job we hate, and then we die. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
I saw numerous people following this path. I couldn't tell if they liked their job or they'd complain about their job. And I thought, why would somebody do that to themselves for 40 years? So I just chose to keep following different steps. So I actually had somebody reach out to me about managing comedians in New York City. And I was like, well, this is at least in the entertainment realm. I'm going to go do that. So that's what got me out of practicing law. And then a whole myriad of other steps from comedians and sales jobs and a bunch of other things until I discovered that I was a medium.
Okay, so that's the pivotal thing. How did that transpire? How did you discover that?
It was a long process. When I got to New York City, I was introduced to a personal development class, and I took that, and it just started to open up different ways of seeing things and understanding. And, it was, I'm going to call more basic compared to what I have now experienced. But I kept following all of the breadcrumbs, the books, the courses, the different modalities. And it was like one thing piled upon another. And it just led me down a multitude of different paths to see what all of this was about. So I guess it's been almost 10 years ago, I was introduced to a Peruvian shaman and started participating in his shamanic journeys. And then about 5 years into it was when I was in one of the journeys, I was there with a friend, had an experience of having information about his grandmother that I wouldn't have known or shouldn't have known. And then I brought it up to him and said, does this make sense for your grandmother? He's like, yeah, that was totally like my grandmother. I'm like, oh, how would I know that? And keep in mind, again, where I came from, there was no talk of mediumship. There was no talk of any of this other worldly things. So it took me a long time to even first understand what a medium was. Like, through my journey, I discovered what a medium was. So when I was asking this question, I actually knew what one was.
Right.
When I was 25, no chance. I had no idea. And so I asked the shaman, I'm like, is there any chance that I'm a medium? And he was like, yeah. And I said, well, I think I'm probably afraid of it. He's like, mm-hmm. And that was the extent of that conversation.
This was somebody that was recommended to you? Is it somebody that you heard about? And then you go through, when you said like going on a journey, are you going to a workshop with this person leading it? Like, how do you connect with a shaman in this world? It's just
right. I'm going to date myself. It's not like you go to the yellow pages and like go flipping through like the shaman section.
Right.
Like, let me check this one out. Sounds good.
Yeah.
ABC shaman. Yeah, not the case. It was through having been in other personal development groups. I was in like a weekly Saturday call with this personal development group. I heard a woman mention about this shamanic journey, and ironically, just 3 days before, I heard somebody else talking about something exactly the same. It was not the same group, but it was the same conversation. And I couldn't help but go, okay, if I hear about this on Wednesday and I hear about it on Saturday, I think I need to investigate. And so I got off that call and called that woman who I'd never met in person and was like, hey, can you tell me more about this? Like, I feel like this is something I should go do. So really, it was more of like word of mouth, trusting the signs. I mean, if you hear about something twice in 1 week and you've never, ever even knew it existed before, like,
pay attention.
Yeah, exactly.
Just for anybody that doesn't know what a shaman is, what is a shaman? Like, it's a spiritual leader, it's a spiritual guide.
More of a spiritual guide and spiritual leader. He's from Peru. So a lot of the culture, obviously Peruvian culture, and look, I don't know the full extent of it, so I don't want to speak outside of what I actually know, but essentially they have a lot of different like spiritual practices and things in their culture that he has brought over here. And so it was part of that. And it's like looking through trauma and releasing trauma aspects. And look, I grew up in what I would call a totally normal family, right? But you can still have trauma, like the 8-year-old when somebody told you they hated your haircut and all of a sudden you decide you're ugly. It could be something like that and not realize the impact that it has on your entire life. And while that seems simple or basic, like I would imagine most listeners can think of one thing right now that was a traumatic experience to them, even though it may not have seemed as like massive as sometimes how we label trauma.
So you go on a couple of journeys with the same shaman. Then you have this intuitive hit. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but about his family. So then what happens?
Really, I mean, it was after the shaman kind of confirmed, like, you could be a medium, that I went and started researching. So leave it to the lawyer. I went home and found a woman who was a medium, and she used to be very high up in the Navy. And so I thought, well, if anybody's going to resonate with me, it's going to be this very left brain Navy woman is going to make sense. So I took an online class. And there was practice within it with other participants in the class. And when you start getting information and you're comparing it with the participants and they're validating it, you're like, okay, well, there's no way I could be making this information up. And again, it's more of a, you have to practice, and certainly the validation helps as well. So I took that class. I went back to the shaman and was like, hey, I've been trying to practice and understand. And so he introduced me to another medium, and I took some of her classes. And then really it was during COVID that I guess this was at like the end of 2019 that I was discovering this, and into the beginning of 2020. And so then when COVID started, had a lot of extra time on my hands. So I would call up friends and be like, can I practice this? Like, can we see if your grandmother's around? Or like, so that's what happened. I just called up my friends who were open to it and just gave readings.
But this is over the phone.
Yep. Over the phone, which is how I learned to work.
Right.
I do in-person things now, but energy is energy. It doesn't matter if you're here in the UK. I've had clients in the UK, so it doesn't matter.
This is just to get a grasp of like what or how this comes about. So is it something that just you'd be talking to someone and it just comes to you as a vision, a visual?
Yes. So there's a multitude of ways that it can show up. So it's called the clairs. So there's 5 of them. Claircognizant is a clear knowing, which is definitely what I was without knowing it, ironically. And that's like just knowing information. But I realize now, like, I've always been clear cognizant, but how would I ever know I knew things other people don't know?
Right.
So people in the past total strangers would have conversations with me, and I would have a conversation with them, and they'd be like, wow, that's exactly what I needed to hear today. It's like, you've known me my entire life. You really helped me. And this was way before I had any idea I had this. And so I've been doing that my whole life. So that's claircognizant, which is the clear knowing. Clairvoyant is clear seeing. So that's like getting an image. It's not like I see dead people walking around or anything like that. I just get an image. So if I told you to picture like a bouquet of flowers, the way that image likely just popped into your mind, that's how I see. I can hear things. I'll hear things in my own voice. So that also, I always like to tell people who are listening too, if you've ever had moments where you're like, what did I just hear? Am I making that up? Like, did I think that? Like, what was that? It's likely that that's clairaudience, that you're hearing something like from spirit or your own intuition. But it's hard to discern because you're like, well, it's in my own voice. But it would be kind of freaky if you had heard a bunch of different voices in your head. I'd prefer to just hear mine.
I think I'd rather hear mine too, yeah.
And then there's like clear feeling. So it's all of these different clairs all in one. And you're like, it depends on, sometimes maybe my seeing will be stronger. Sometimes I'll hear stronger. So it's really just an interpretation of all of the information that you're receiving at the same time. Clairsentience is feeling.
That would be a really interesting thing to embrace. It's like something that you're trying to you have to sort out yourself of like what's actually happening there too, right? It's not like, oh, well, this is just what I was born to do. It's kind of like, okay, this is what I have now. What does that mean? And have I had that all my life? Which you sound like you've had that tendency, but it's also, because I've also heard from people that do spiritual work where they say like, to increase your ability to be more intuitive, you do have to practice. There's like a way of practicing being better at listening to that internal voice or whatever that is that you may have. It's like a skill set like anything else that you, with practice, can get better at. Is that right?
Yes, it totally makes sense. And we all have intuition, right? So it's like when you say like, oh, I should have trusted my gut or those types of feelings, it's like that feeling is the intuition that we all have. And it is practicing it. So it's like when you hear that, and sometimes it's a very subtle voice, especially in the beginning, like it's like listening to it, but the more you listen to it and trust it, the more it's going to show up for you. And yes, it is a totally different skill set.
Yeah.
I was 38 years old discovering I had this. Yeah, it's a whole different path. And I obviously could have said like, no, I'm not doing this. However, I think it's been the piece in my entire life that's been so-called missing, why I went from so many jobs, like looking for the thing that lit me up. It's because I couldn't find it. I didn't know I had it.
As we all know, change is inevitable. Sometimes it comes out of nowhere, leaving us to pick up the pieces and navigate our way through the unknown. Other times it's a decision we've made to step into a bigger version of ourselves or find more joy or fulfillment in our lives. Day by Day book was designed to help you face the discomfort of those shifts in life that are pushing you to that next level of growth and learning. It's a guided journal with a simple tracking system to manage your daily well-being during challenging times, setting you up for success no matter what life throws your way. Join our community of over 15,000 changemakers and get started on your daybook journey today. The time is now to step into change to create a life you love. To get your day-by-day book, go to livedaybyday.com. So once you found out that, okay, this is actually happening, like what made you take that leap to say, I'm going to actually do this for people? Did it transpire into that?
It really came down to one of the people I had practiced with sent me a referral and that person paid me. I was like, oh, okay.
I guess this is a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. And I won't forget this client. And sometimes she'll still reach back out. One time I charged whatever I charged and then she'd come back and pay me more. She's like, you just don't understand how this is really so helpful. And here's more money. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. It was through that, truly, that. And so, I'm grateful that somebody recognized what that was about. And then moving forward, just realizing, okay, people do want to pay for this. There is value, of course. And that, and she told me, and I won't forget this either. She said, Kristen, it's not like you're making a long distance call to Germany.
Oh, that is classic.
I was like, yeah.
The great thing about it though is, it's really meaningful to people. That's the part that the part of how you do it and how this, how you learn that you had this capability, but then it's like putting it into practice and seeing how this affects people's lives, which is, I am sure, really gratifying for somebody that's able to give that to someone.
I look at my own experience, and I had never gone to a medium or psychic before I even knew I had this. I was afraid. So when people come to me and they're a little timid about it, I'm like, I totally get it. I had never gone, so I can't judge how you're feeling right now. So looking back now and seeing when another medium brings me a message from my dad, the impact it has on me, that's how I'm able to, that's why I'm so grateful I'm able to help other people with this, because I know how much it's transformed helped me with my grief and processing for, my dad's passing. And that's why I'm really grateful that I can help people with that. So yes. And then the stories that I hear when people come back later, it's things that I had no idea that was going to transpire when I'm giving a message about whatever it may be.
Well, and are you able, when you're giving different messages, are there times that things don't come to you?
I've never not felt anything. Sometimes it's just much harder because if they're not as open to the energy of it or to receiving, sometimes it feels like you're trying to throw information at a brick wall, and it's a lot more work and it's a lot harder. Sometimes it's not like people don't want to hear. Maybe they're not ready to hear some things or don't want to hear exactly what you're saying. So it makes it even kind of want to be like, hey, don't kill the messenger. I don't know. I'm not making this up. I'm just...
Yes. What I love so much, Kristen, is just how this is transformed. So tell us a little bit about your other career and kind of now how you've interwoven these two things together.
Sure. So I was primarily doing mediumship on its own, but it became so stressful because of really trying to, build a business by giving reading after reading after reading. That's a lot. And then I was like, well, if I could just kind of add something else to it. And I've wanted to be a flight attendant since I was 9 years old. I should have just followed that nugget way back. So I wanted to get that job, not only because I thought it would be fun, but I like doing in-person groups. And I thought, well, it sure would be great to be a flight attendant and have flight benefits so I can travel anywhere for free. So that was part of my motivation as well. And so now I'm able to do in-person groups anywhere in the country.
And so you can put in for a destination that you want to go with, right? Because that's kind of how it works, where you can put in for different locations or whatever.
I can do that. Or if I'm not actually working, then I can just fly for free on standby.
Nice. Okay. So then the additional offering, I want you to talk about this because I think this is just brilliant what you do.
So my additional offering came up because I actually had broken my foot. And this was just within the last 10 weeks. I went and ran a half marathon in Madrid. I had an incredible experience. I really connect with spirit when I'm running, especially my dad. So that was amazing. And then I got back, and within 24 hours of being back in the United States, I broke my foot just by walking.
Oh, God.
So I couldn't fly. I couldn't work as a flight attendant. And I wasn't really in the state of mind to be doing mediumship readings. And I'm very conscious of that too. If I'm not in a good headspace, I'm not going to just take on readings because I just don't feel like it's something you need to be very in alignment with yourself. So after I kind of processed everything that was happening, because I couldn't walk, I couldn't drive. It was like I was just stuck in my apartment.
Yeah.
And when I was doing this, it came to me about the flying medium. as I was diving into it more, I was like, oh my gosh, I can do readings for people and help them discover where would be a good spiritual place for them to go. And then I also found a company where I have become a travel advisor, so I can actually book and plan all of that travel for them as well.
I love that. That is a brilliant idea, only because, first of all, I could tell you 10 people right off the bat that I know that would love to do that. When people are kind of interested in travel and exploration, which I think happens in different times in people's lives, right? That's really powerful of like, where could I go? And is it based on their story or based on kind of what they're spiritually, how would you go about determining that?
More so connecting and just doing a reading based upon like how I do any other normal type of reading, but focusing more on like the spiritual path or growth. Like when I went to Spain, I felt like I had been there before. I've never been to Spain. I'd never been to Madrid, but I felt like I got along so easily. I went by myself. I could, it was just like, it was like second nature. I wasn't scared. There was no, and so I was like, maybe there are other places like this for other people, but they don't know it. And sometimes you're afraid to go do that because you don't know until you get there what that experience is going to be like. So just doing a reading and kind of tapping into the energy of it and connecting with what would be a good place for them to go or take a trip. And then what I'm really looking forward to at some point is like going on adventures with people and like taking groups places.
That would be an amazing trip. Like a medium with you. I mean, maybe not everybody's like that, but that stuff just fascinates me. And I think it would be something that would be such a gift to give to people, because sometimes if you're sitting with someone for an hour, like, an hour reading or whatever it is, if you're there and you're kind of in the moment with them, depending on where you're at too, right? I mean, if it's a spiritual place, that's a whole nother, oh my gosh. I didn't realize that was so recent because I just saw your website and I was like, okay, this is brilliant. I love it.
When you're in alignment with spirit and yourself, the things that can come together. I've tried to put together websites and things and all the stuff for so long in the past. And because I worked through a lot of the grief, there's grief and trauma around my foot. Like I ran all the time and I couldn't drive. Like, so I had to work through a lot of emotions. And I use exercise a lot of times to process things. But when I couldn't use exercise, I had to sit and process things. Not fun.
No, you're left sitting with yourself, and that's sometimes not the best place to be.
No, until it is the best place to be when you get on the other side of it,
Yes.
And that's the key piece. And so, I mean, I probably sat in this mess for 6 weeks at least of like, oh, I can't believe this, whatever. And then I got the flying medium and I put the site together in 2 days. And keep in mind, I'm not a technical you saw, right?
Yes. I mean, I loved it. I mean, I seriously was like, it was so well done. And I mean, not to talk about websites, but like, seriously, I looked at it and I was like, this is brilliant. Honestly. So I'm not just saying that, like, it truly looked like you would put a ton into that. But I think that you bring up a really good point. It's like when you're in alignment internally, I've experienced something recently where I was like, wow, I normally would think this to death. And I just threw it up on the wall and suddenly things came, you know what I mean? It's like, it just depends on where your head is. But I love that. I love that was so quick,
Oh yeah. And that's how I knew. And that was crazy because I mean, I've never built a website before. I've tried to do different things. I've struggled. I've beat my head against a wall. I got frustrated. I quit, all the things. And then I got to this one and it was like easy. It was actually kind of fun. I couldn't believe it. And it was like, things just came together. Like I'd be like, oh, this template's great. Or, and it was so much easier than I ever would have thought. And that also in that lesson, I learned I don't always need to think things that have been hard in the past need to be hard in the future. Like if it's super hard, maybe it's not the right thing at the right time.
Right.
So that was one of the things I learned from building that. So this offering is actually brand new.
I cannot wait. We got to stay close because I think you're going to have a lot of people interested in this. It is just a very unique way. Well, you know this because you've worked with groups, you've worked with individuals, so you understand. And it's people that are interested in that, right? You've got other people that might be like, oh, no way, I don't want to have anything to do with it. But I think there's such a desire for that and for people to go deeper. And travel is I was just talking to somebody the other day about Costa Rica. This is just random, but I was like, it's a very spiritual place. There's just different locations and different places that at different times in your life speak to you for different reasons. And I think it's just, I don't know. I love that you're doing that. And are you doing a ton of travel too? You're probably traveling all over the place.
Well, since my foot, I have not been, but I will be once I am like okay to go back. And I will. Travel is, I used to write in my journal. I'll disclose a journal entry here.
Yes.
I get paid. I used to write. I get paid to travel. And I would write this all the time. I get paid to travel, and because it's something that I have really enjoyed my entire life, I feel like there's so much to learn. When you're in an experience that's outside of your comfort zone, even more opportunities can open up for you.
Mm-hmm.
Or for me, I've had that experience. And so that has been something that I've been passionate about, but I could never figure out, well, how do you incorporate travel into all these different things? And had I not taken the journey to become the flight attendant, I wouldn't have figured out that I could like couple that with my mediumship and now come up with like the flying medium.
Yes.
Like that, they look like they're totally separate until they came together.
And then they feel really right when you see it, because you're like, this totally makes sense. Now, what would you say to someone if they felt like they had tendencies toward mediumship or just the spiritual world? Like, what would you tell them from your experience to do if they felt like they wanted to explore that further?
So first of all, if there's even like any type of nudge, and a lot of times I feel like, and especially like left brain people, well, I guess I'm both now, but I used to consider myself like definitely just left brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People where you're in those left brain industries or whatever the case may be, is like we all have all of it. It's just to the degree that we tap into it or follow it. And sometimes it's like we can all have it. Everybody can probably play basketball, but we're probably not all going to be Michael Jordan, right? So like allowing that path and following it. And so sometimes it can be as basic as like doing maybe some internet research, and not everything's going to be great, but I feel like the universe is going to give you clues, but you have to also want to like trust and move forward. And I don't know why I'm even saying this, but like sometimes if you see 1111 or 222 or all these numbers or different aspects, signs and symbols, like trust that that's also an indication you're on the right path. And certainly I have guidance and tips and suggestions, and I've taken tons of courses and classes and readings. So I have a bunch of resources. And sometimes it might just be that it's like up to you to discover what the path is. Just like taking a step, it's like for every step we take, the universe takes 10,000. So take a step, right? Like order the book, or again, maybe somebody mentioned a book twice and you're like, maybe I should read that. It's opening yourself up also to allowing the information to come in and then letting that guide you to the next best step.
I love that. And I think you brought up earlier when we were talking through in the intro about that resistance piece. Like, did you find yourself resistant at any point of being like, I can't necessarily do this? Or were you always like, okay, this is the next step. This is where I'm going to go?
Oh, I was just resistant the other day.
Really?
Like, I mean, that's like the spiritual path, right? You're like, oh, I know I should be doing the thing, but I can't do the thing, right?
Right.
Like I created the whole flying medium, was super excited about it. And then it took me a couple weeks, literally until the other day, to post about it on Facebook, because I sometimes struggle with being seen and like, what are people going to think? And she's onto a different project, so there's all this like talk, and that's part of the growth and the challenge.
Yes.
Right? Like just because you have resistance doesn't mean it's the wrong thing. I know I said before, sometimes it's hard. Yes, maybe that is. But if you really feel the resistance, sometimes it's about pushing through. Yes. So no, I've had my fair share of resistance and continue to. And if I didn't, I'd be like, well, I'm probably taking the easy way out.
I like what you say with that, because I think there is that, it's kind of like getting through it to get through it. Like if you can befriend resistance when it knocks on the door and it's there and you can recognize it for what it is, I think it can get you kind of to pop out the other end in an easier way than being like, oh my God, what does this mean? And then go into that like spin cycle around things.
Yeah.
I, of course, don't speak from my experience.
No, I'm sure you don't.
Don't speak from my personal experience, of course. Oh my gosh. Well, Kristen, this has been so enlightening. And I honestly, I really believe that you're going to have more stories to tell about this, because I think you're onto something really, really important and really, really cool. I want to know more. You and I we'll chat. We'll chat over email. I'll be keeping tabs. But thank you so much for joining us and talking about this, because this is a story. It's just I think it nudges people to listen to maybe some of those subtle nudges that you're talking about. And it's just always good to be aware of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I could leave with one thing, it's like, when you get those nudges, just start following them because you have no idea where you'll end up. If you would have asked me at 25 if I'd be connecting with angels and talking about traveling to spiritual destinations, and I'd have been like, you're out of your mind. Right. But I'm so much happier with my path now.
That is the best thing to hear, right? You're in a much better place, which is what life is all about.
Yep.
Kristen, thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. That's it for now. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. And share it with a friend or on social media to spread the good word, so more women like you can find us and join in on the fun. For more information on the podcast or Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com.